Dear self, you probably thought you weren't going to be free in your thoughts and expressive in your journey, moving away from hurtful things, thinking it will one day work itself out until you realize it wasn't going to be, and you had to take steps to walk through it. It wasn't an easy journey. You lost many parts of yourselves friends didn't understand. You didn't understand. Much was taking place in a tiny world that you didn't know existed. You had to go back to the basics, start from scratch, and renew your thoughts and adjust the way you listened. You became more aware of sight, tunneling your vision to see your best self even in the moments where you were stuck in your worst self, but ensuring that everything you saw for yourself would be reached by putting in the work. Now that you're here, there is so much more to learn. You're better than before, but why do you mourn parts of your old self? Mourning parts of our old self is a natural thing. It is a loss that we didn't know was capable. All of the things that we have lived through, collected, and sat with for many years collectively become parts of what we consider our old self. We gain friendships and connections based on our ideologies and the way we connected, perhaps at a lower level. And when we began to turn the page, many of us lost those friends and connections because we were no longer adhering to the similarities that once made a great connection by means of that understanding of our old self. Some of the things that we did, the places that we went to, the things that we allowed become innate in our being, and now outside of it, we recognize that many of those things didn't serve us best. It's almost like the good and bad in many instances. When we think back, it seems to be a tie between the good and bad, a leveled being. But when we look at it, when we examine it, we realize that our new self is way better than our old self. Let me explain. Many of us were operating on levels where we were operating to survive, operating to live, operating to get by, operating with no emotion, and operating out of hurt. We never took the time, nor did we have the moments to sit in that space and recognize how problematic we were in our old selves, because what we knew is sufficient for the way that we were living at that sad moment. It's hard for us in our old self to recognize the aspects of ourselves being wrong or doing wrong. By default, all of us at some point thought that the way we were operating was okay. It's much like saying, this is the way I've always been, but the way that you've always been isn't an indication that you're doing everything right. I've said this before, and I'll continue to say this. There's always a situation that provokes a means of change, because it shakes up so much to the core that our body and mind and our heart begs for deliverance from the things we struggle with. When we heal, we recognize it's a slow process, and we are aiding to ensure that the wound that needs to be healed is being taken care of with the utmost diligence and care, so that it doesn't affect us later and become 90 to 100% healed. The interesting thing about, a scar, a wound, if it is severe, it is there, and you'll see remnants of that wound. No matter how you try to put topical treatments on it, there still will be a scar, and that's okay. I want us to stop running away from acknowledging our old self. While we are in this newness of our new self and indulging and loving who we are, with all of the things gained, the lessons learned, and even a different view of reality in life, let's not forget where we began. And I say this because we can be teachers to people who are sitting in positions in which we once were. And this is why testimonies are powerful, and our connections of being truthful with people are very, very helpful. Here's some things I want you to think about as you reflect on mourning your old self. First, give yourself permission to mourn. Often, granting ourselves permission to grieve is the first step in overcoming various types of grief. Give yourself the space and compassion you need to move through this. Let go of what you believe you're supposed to feel about your transition and the person you're supposed to be. Number 2, talk about the losses that came with your transition. It is acceptable and even essential to acknowledge that you will regret or lose some things as you embark on this new path. Thank your former self by writing a letter. The desire to isolate yourself from the people you once were is completely understandable, but it may be detrimental to you if you continue to not acknowledge that sense of self. Consider instead embracing that individual, the old self, and thanking them for helping you reach that point. You could not have accomplished this without their assistance and fortitude. Even their suffering, sadness, and discomfort are a part of your journey because they pushed you towards your true self. Number 3, forgive your former self. Everyone makes the most of their situation by making use of the knowledge and tools at hand. And even when you are doing that right up until the point of change, you have to acknowledge where you are. It's natural to feel frustrated by the time you wasted or the wrong turns you made along the way. Self-compassion and forgiveness are difficult to practice, but the rewards are worth the effort. Forgiving someone out loud or on paper can help. I forgive my past self. Remember that this process takes time and that you may need to remind yourself to forgive and accept forgiveness. Shift your language. If you're having trouble talking about your old self because the names, pronouns, and events don't sit right with you, it may be time to try something new. The things that help one person may not help another. Try out numerous ways of introducing yourself and settle on the one that seems more natural. When referring to your previous self, you may use your old name, pronouns, or identifiers. You may update them, or you may just stick to I. For some, it's simpler to talk about their old selves in the third person as if they were discussing a close friend. While you attempt to integrate those two aspects of your life, this is a reasonable, in the meantime, solution. I want you to make a list of all the ways you've transitioned. It is most likely that this may not be your first time of a transition and leaving parts of yourself behind to embrace the new you. You are experiencing in transition something different than you ever felt before. So if this is your new, journey, your new transition, all of this will be unfamiliar to you. And it's quite understandable that you don't understand how you're navigating and mourning for your past self. And if you have transitioned, had journeys before and operating at different levels of things that you needed to just heal from, you understand that those past things can be difficult because you're still mourning those parts. But I always say the way we show up afterward with our big old healed self is more beautiful than ever. And last, I think, sometimes we beat ourselves up for having true valid feelings of who we are and where we were. I found that expressing how I feel may not register with others. Therefore, the understanding doesn't translate. And this is why you must be selective when you speak on journey and healing and your mourning season. People can sometimes feel that this phase is one that we step in front of, when the reality is it chooses us and sits us down. As a collective, we are a community understanding, but we have experience in being a sister or a brother to those who ask for our opinions and guidance in an unfamiliar space. My hope is that we see the greatest parts of ourselves exist because we choose to want to walk into the light and walk away from the old self that stayed there based on fear, personal survival tactics, hurt, adversity, and lack of knowledge and understanding. When we know better, we do better. And I'm so glad to know that many of you are doing better than before. One of the key components of healing is understanding that healing is a process that takes time. It is definitely not a on and off switch. You don't get to stand in healing and decide that from a week from now, you will be completely rid of all of the things that you have been suffering from and all of the things that are apparent to you. It doesn't work that way, because even in the transition of healing, you recognize that you still got some things to recover from. I spoke about in alcohol and cigarettes, or cigarettes and alcohol, that I still was living with triggers where I would smell cigarettes or that particular alcohol, and it took me to a place where I was remembering and recalling. But see, the part about healing that I understood about myself was that my triggers became lower and lower. It did not increase, but it decreased. And that's when I knew that I was, healing throughout that journey. Now, I can't say for a fact that my healing would show up as me forgetting those instances in my life. That's not what healing is. That's not the goal of healing either. And I want us to understand that healing is being able to get through it. I still have that scar. I'm still gonna, have that remnant of that reminder there, but it doesn't hurt so bad. When a scar is fresh, when a wound is fresh, it hurts. It's painful to the touch. The areas around it hurts. It's just painful. As it heals, the pain subsides, and then you are left with the remnant as a reminder, but it doesn't affect you as much as it does. Going back into acknowledging your past self. When we acknowledge who we was before, we are operating on a level of understanding that this is who I was. This is not a complete picture of who I am. This new person that I have stepped into and become is giving thanks to the old person, because if it were not for the old person, I wouldn't be who I am. I think many times in our journey of healing and then outside of it, we want to compare our journey and a compare and contrast. But let me tell you something. The realm in which you step in now is where you should be. Looking back never allowed anyone to go forward. It's like using an example of a race. When they tell you to run, they say run and look straight ahead. Don't look at your opponent. Don't look to your left. Don't look to your right, and don't look backwards, because it slows you up. You are competing against yourself. You are directing your attention to the goal, not what's surrounded around you. So it doesn't help you, nor does it assist to look at your old self and mourn those parts of your old self, wanting for different aspects of the old self to come into the new self. Maybe the old self you thought was a little bit more fun. You had more fun activities, but then when you think about it in correspondence to the things that you considered fun, how many of those things came with negative things behind it? How many of those things were attached with behaviors that the new self says, that's not right? How many of those things in your past self coincided with just the way in which you show up now, knowing that it does you no favors, right? And I want us to think about that. We'll all mourn. We will. That's just a part of the process of coming out of healing and becoming a renewed person. But I want us to stay constant on the fact that we're here, we're better, and we're showing up much better than we have before. Before I leave you, I want to thank you for being here, but I appreciate all of the reviews. I'm honest when I say that the reviews help me a lot, and they help me to focus on the things that I need to get out of my body and just speak outwardly to you. And I want to go through this list. So we're going to start with Mother to BB. She said, thank you. I found you on Instagram at the beginning of my second healing journey, and I'm so grateful. Your wisdom has led me to unlocking trauma that I've kept locked away for so long. Mother of 2BB, thank you. Roki 777. She said, feeling seen and validated. Thank you for sharing your heart and soul in this podcast. I saw a reel on Instagram and both my friend and I started to listen. Your words sink deep into our soul as we can relate with many of your stories. Thank you, Roki777. Nick. She said, I can relate. Thank you for your podcast. I've literally binge listened to all your podcasts and I can relate in so many ways. Nick, I appreciate you. Moso29, she said, thank you. And I'm gonna, let me see. I can't see the whole title, y'all, but it says thank you from the BOT. So from the bottom of my heart, I'm gonna assume, from Moso29, she said, there are days where I feel alone in my healing and journey of self-discovery. I found you on TikTok, then tuned into your podcast. She said some more, but I'll keep it there. Thank you, Moso29. VMCAA. I found you on social media and wanted to hear more. I've learned a lot about you and different experiences to the point that it's helped me to understand my obstacles. VMCCAA, I appreciate you. Last but certainly not least is TN Jackson 1220. She says, thank you. Your energy and your light is helping in my life. My heart is full with your messages. I appreciate you guys for taking the moment to even doing that. It also helps me just to get better. Like I said, I started this in December. This is going into May. And so it is a short span of time. And this community has been growing, which has been such a blessing in my life. I have my email open. I have gotten some emails and I want to hear about topics that you guys want to hear. Again, I've written down so many things that I want to talk about in the near future, but I'd love to hear the insight from you guys. My email is seasondialogue@gmail.com. And so if it's something that maybe you have gone through or maybe you're battling with or you just want to hear about it, don't feel shy. Like, hit the email up. It is open for these topics so that we can have these seasoned dialogues. Additionally, I'm thankful for the ones who have traveled from TikTok and Instagram to listen on this platform. Many days, I'll be honest with you, it's not easy. I spoke about the purging season in the last episode, and there was a fear that came over me. And let me tell you something, and I'll extend this to everyone who is listening, because I think that this is something that we all will face. When you're stepping into something new and you see just how God is really opening like the airways, better breathing and just really sharpening your sight, you become scared because now you are sitting in a new position, in a new light, and you don't know how to feel. This whole transition of just newness for me has been at times overwhelming, where I've second guessed if this is where I'm supposed to be right now. But then there's a reassurance that I'm not doing this wrong. And I can only use this as an example. In my old self, I constantly overthought. And I do overthink a little bit, but not as much as I did in my past self. And so when I overthought, many times I would just grab for any solution because I wanted to be done and rid of thinking in so many ways. And oftentimes the option that I grabbed was not fruitful for me, and I suffered the consequences because of it. And now walking into the space of the new me, I am able to analyze my decisions when I began to, think or overthink. And I sit with the space and knowing that God has me covered every step of the way. So if you have in your new found you and in your new space and your new head, if you are like me where you're second guessing things that are happening right now, and listen, a lot of these things are joyful things. They are things that we have been praying for. Many times when we sit in that space, we're asking ourselves, do I even deserve this? You deserve it all. You do. God blesses all of us. It is what we do in it that determines how long it will last. And I just want you to stay encouraged that if you're, journeying, wanting to get into this new self with intentions of showing up bigger, better, and more grateful in your newfound season, I want you to stay the course. There will be some moments where you will backslide a little bit. Again, you are rearing to this new way of thinking, this new way of appearing, and this new body in a sense that you are. And so it will be a little difficult at first, but I want you to stay the course. And if you are over a healing journey, a facet of life, a instance that you had to work through and you're there, I want you to continue to nurture yourself, because now that you're on the outside of this whole thing, there's still much to learn. We don't have it all. We don't have all of the answers, but this newfound self pulls to learn more about ourselves and then be connected in many ways that are higher than us. I'm grateful. I'm full. I'm not going to extend this episode. Thank you so much for just tapping in. Thank you so much for being you. I hope that you guys enjoy the days to come, the weekend. This is a Friday. If you're listening to it on another day, cool too. But I hope that you have a relaxing weekend, and I will see you guys next week. Oh, don't forget. I want to remind you, we're doing weekly episodes, and look forward to July. We are amping this thing back up. Again, I want to, tell you again, my email is open, seasondialogue@gmail.com. So hit me up with the things that you want to talk about. I am just open to receiving. And also, if it's anything, you want to discuss on one-on-one, I am here. I'm thinking about doing coaching as well. I've had many people asking me about coaching, and I started off trying to conjure up everything that I needed, and then I backed away because I wanted to make sure that I had time to create that space to be available for coaching. Anyway, I said I was going to end this, and I am talking again. All right, y'all, I love you. We'll talk about that later. All right, enjoy your weekend and enjoy the days to come. Bye-bye.